So, welcome, John Deighan, CEO of SPUC, the Society for the Protection of Unborn Children. My name is Sarah de Nordwall, and this is EWTN GB Remote. John, I'm delighted to have you here, though here, in fact, is you're in Glasgow and I'm in London, and you've got a brand new studio. Tell us a bit about that.
Yeah, well, first of all, thank you for having me on. It's wonderful to see you again. I know of part of all the wonderful work you do, including some collaboration with SPUC. Yeah, we've revamped the studio in Glasgow, and we've also got another studio in our London office. So yeah, we're quite excited about that. So we've spent the last few weeks getting all the technical stuff in place, and yeah, I'm really quite excited what we're going to be able to do from now on. We even have a green room, believe it
Oh
or
my
not.
goodness,
Yeah, so
really
it's we're
serious
we're
then.
really
Wow.
serious about it, and yeah, so as you know, the need for a presence for people coming from our perspective is greatly needed on the new media, and we want to try and raise our game a bit and try to make sure that we're doing stuff that's entertaining for people, so that attracts them to see it, but to play an important part in trying to inform people so they know what the issues are that are being debated or being confronted by those coming from the
Mm.
pro-life perspective.
Well, in our program today, it will be wonderful to have a bit of information about what are the most important things that are happening at the moment in case people aren't up to speed, but then to explore a little deeper and think about why is it that people can't see the obvious, can't see the unborn child in the womb? We've got the best scientific scanning that's ever existed. The excuses for not seeing human life as human life are vastly diminished, and yet the amount of resistance to human life seems to be increased. So I hope that in our program we can have a bit of exploration around that, and perhaps even look a bit into the history of how we got from, a culture of life, perhaps it's never fully existed, but a culture that accepts human life as needing respect, to this culture of death. So, first of all, John, could you tell us about the big campaigns that you have on right now that we should be paying attention to, praying about, maybe donating to help with the campaigning? But what's on your mind right now?
The key one that we're really facing is the assisted suicide. This is the closest now we've ever come to it being passed in the UK. We're facing two serious attacks. One in Westminster, which has passed at the second reading. Now, once it
Right.
passes at that stage, typically it goes through. However, if we can flip 28 MPs, there's a chance that we can win that before the bill actually goes through. So that's something that we can do there.
Right.
In Scotland as well, we're facing a similar proposal for assisted suicide, and that just passed stage one. Now, stage one is where the MSPs vote on the general principles of a bill. So it means in principle, they support assisted suicide. And typically, if you pass at that stage in the Scottish Parliament, it will become legislation.
So this is a really, really dangerous stage then, both in Scotland
It's
and in
crucial.
England.
I mean, there are different bills in terms of just like how profound they are, and the fact that the governments in both sort of UK and the Scottish level are permitting free votes. So there is a chance that people will change for the next stages, and there are some politicians who've said they only supported it in principle to allow more debate. Now
Yes,
that's
I heard
that's
that.
that's
That's
a pretty
interesting.
foolish. It's a pretty foolish thing to do, to be honest. I mean,
Mm.
because either you support protecting everyone's life for the entirety of their life, or you don't. But the danger of
Mm.
just allowing more debate really was bad. There's also the possibility that some of them just say that to encourage others to do the same, and that helped because the margin, they won by 14 votes in Scotland, and that was substantially bigger than they expected. I think the other side expected they might shave it by a couple of votes, but
Oh,
for the
really?
yes, yes. So for them to see them win by 14 must have been a massive encouragement for them.
Mm.
But it still does mean that if we can change seven or
Yeah.
eight people, there's a chance, and that is possible,
It's
but it's
interesting.
tough.
My MP, Jeremy Mayhew, in Norfolk, he said that he wanted to just listen to the debate, and I wrote to him about three times in total. But he, in fact, is a big enemy now of the assisted suicide legislation,
Oh, good.
having, which is great, isn't it?
Yeah.
When he said, when he'd heard the debate, and he did share in his letter, the experience that he'd had with his father dying, and realized that this was something, we need to be protecting people at the end of their lives. We need to be, talking about the importance of reverence, and not how to sort of finish people off. This kind of view of autonomy as the guiding principle. And maybe here, this is where we can think about this autonomy principle. It has in the past been more strongly part of the abortion argument, but it's actually, isn't it relatively new in the assisted dying argument? What do you think is driving it? This sense of, I can do what I want and I refuse to see the consequences on anyone else.
Yeah, I think the changes over the last decades has profoundly impacted people and how they think. The Christian culture that informed Europe and the West is pretty much over, and
Mm.
the foundations of that protected people are starting to fall apart. I suppose you could put it back to perhaps the Enlightenment. We could go back there, or even before that. I suppose the Enlightenment or the French Revolution is another example.
Mm.
So there are key important historical events
Mm.
that shifted priorities. But I suppose the French Revolution, when they talk about liberty, sort of
Yeah.
humanism has developed that. They see the essence of humanity as being the ability to do what you want. So
Yes, the definition of your dignity is
yeah,
seen as that. Yeah.
so I think freedom in that way has been seen as an absolute freedom from any restriction. And we also live at a time when people's lives are very comfortable and their expectations are very high, and the level of control they have over their lives is very high. So I think probably we have a minority of people who, for them, the thought of having to suffer any sort of indignity or
Mm.
any need to be dependent on others is
Yeah.
genuinely terrifying for them. So I think they're at the cutting edge of what's driving the assisted suicide and euthanasia movement.
Yeah.
Um, and allied to that is this terror of pain, the idea that they might be suffering in life. I think that really genuinely terrorizes people. And there's lots of chat about those who are the campaigners for assisted suicide and euthanasia. They talk a lot about it's like choices and compassion as long as we have safeguards. There's a lot of talk about that, but the big thing that comes through in all the storytelling that they do is fear. There's lots of fear about this. There's
Yeah.
lots of really difficult, hard cases, and their answer to that is really one of despair, which is, listen, we can't face those terrible things, but there's a safe clinical way out. We can get these people to just end their lives, and it's going to be painless. Now, that actually is not true, but
It's not even true. No.
yes, for the sake of
Mm.
campaigning and for the sake of public storytelling,
Yeah.
the culture is being changed by that. I mean, I've been fighting assisted suicide really for the last 26 years. In 1999 was the first serious time I had to be involved with it, and all of that time I've seen that develop. That that people really focus on the fear of the thought that they might suffer, and
Yeah.
we've seen the public debate, but that's really what's behind them. So if when they get asked, like, do you support assisted suicide, they really think they're being asked, like, do you support people being helped to avoid suffering at the end of life or not?
Yeah.
And so that's the false dichotomy that really is going on in people's heads. And you were chatting earlier about why do people accept things like that are obviously wrong.
Hmm.
You would think that the science could show them the reality of the dignity of every human life, but for them the emotion of that, the formation of being taught about that, it really switches off their intellect, and it makes it very much
Yes.
more about their emotions. And we know that
Yeah.
storytelling is vitally important in campaigning.
I have a teacher friend, and he says that when the students aged 11 come into his class. He teaches religion. He says that they're basically nearly all nihilists, even though they don't know they are. And he gets them to learn to think, and he set up a philosophy club. And eventually he begins to illustrate to them that they don't believe in anything. Well, they say they don't believe in anything. They don't believe in any moral standards. And it seems to be that the holy grail of their thinking that they've been, already by the age of 11 have absorbed is that the important thing is to know that you mustn't tell anyone else what to do. And that
Yeah.
you absolutely must do your own thing. And that they are also not allowed to say, that something is wrong, even to the point
Yeah. Yeah.
of, here's a child sitting in front of you, is it equal whether I kill it or not? So and they're like, well, it's not for me to say. Literally. So there has been an extraordinary intellectual mindset shift. And the re-education of the country, it's a slow burn as well as an emergency, isn't it? As you mentioned, the French Revolution, which is supposed to be about reason, but now we've had the collapse of reason. And as you mentioned, the return to emotion, or the turn to emotion. And this is why you have been championing an education in messaging, understanding how messaging is distorting how we think and feel about these things, and training pro-lifers to engage in some more intelligent types of, I don't know, message sharing, storytelling, and culture building. Would you like to tell us a little bit more about that, the whole idea of messaging and how that came to be
Yes. Well,
top of agenda, really?
yeah. Well, I spent quite a bit of time examining political movements and how political
Ah,
change was made. So part of my experience was looking at how messaging was conducted and how
mm,
effective it could be. Now, it's even since I first started to look at it, it's developed massively. And you saw things, for example, David Cameron introduced his nudge unit, for example. So there's our understanding of how the brain works, how marketing can be done, how to
wow,
influence people is really profound now. So
gosh.
we can shape whole populations, we can
Mm,
control people's behavior, and we can really influence their attitudes. So, I mean, you touched on that, the new morality. The new morality is we should never, the only mortal sin now is to judge someone. So you can't ever
yes,
judge anyone. And ironically, the people who promote that the most are always judging you for judging people,
of
you know.
course.
So, so
Of course.
there's inbuilt ironies in it that they don't see. But I think some of the people promoting it actually, well, they've got mixed motives. Some of them they don't care about whether it's rational or not. They have a particular aim and they will get there by hook or by crook. So part of that experience was I looked at how different sort of social movements were effective socially and then politically, and I thought we really need to learn from that and try to
Yeah,
introduce that in our pro-life messaging. So part of that was we created a sort of various initiatives, but trying to do sort of cultural outreach. And I suppose the key
mm,
elements we identified in that is most people, when they're absorbing information, are using their emotions to filter it.
yeah.
Actually, Alistair McIntyre's got a wonderful book, After Virtue, that
Oh, yes.
shows the development of what he calls emotivism through the 20th century. And he really analyzes the philosophical foundations of it. Why did we arrive here where we are at
Very
emotivism?
interesting.
And he also identifies that now in public discourse, people are not even able to encounter those from opposing positions because they're
Mm,
using language differently. And that the whole foundations of public discourse now are damaged. A lot of it is for like emotion, and people are having to say, well, I need to out emotion this person. That's why you see a lot of the debates now on many issues are all about what's the trump card? And a trump card is, well, if you disagree with me, people will die. I mean, that's I've seen
yeah,
that
yeah.
used in really
A
some
lot of circumstances,
some
yeah.
crazy ones. You know, I actually I put an email. I got a bit grumpy once in a hotel, and I just thought I'm going to send an email just to respond to that because when I went into the room in the bathroom, it had a sign up saying, "Recycle your towel." to save lives. And I thought, oh, come on, it's a bit dramatic, it's got like, if I want another towel for a shower tomorrow, somebody's going to die, but it made me reflect on the fact that emotivism now is being seen as a trump card, a shortcut for everything.
As long as you don't use it to defend unborn children, obviously.
Yes. So emotion is very important, and the point you made also at the start, Sarah, when you were asking about why can people look at the unborn and think, well, I can still kill it, it's because the evidence shows that people, if they've been emotionally conditioned for something, even if they see the truth in front of them, contradicting it, they will reject the truth. Because
that's a really important point. Maybe we need to even repeat that. So if somebody is convinced of something, are you saying?
If emotionally they are so convinced of something that they will even refuse to believe the evidence of their own eyes when they see something that contradicts it, because it's such a powerful dimension of the human person. So the emotional condition is hugely important. Now, another dimension that we've explored in that is that, well, how do you use emotion? And typically you use it in storytelling. So storytelling is hugely important. And that's why films and soap operas and dramas and any form of communication, people are picking up all sorts of cues from what they're looking at and the stories that they're seeing. And in the stories, you can choose who the good guys are and the bad guys are. And there's nice, easy ways to create a really good bad guy or a really good guy. And also you get to control the chess pieces really on the board. So you can choose how they behave and what the consequences are for them, even if it's diametrically opposed to what would happen in real life.
When we first started thinking, when I was performing a little piece of drama at a conference, a pro-life conference, and we had a conversation together about art and theatre and film and so forth, and how easy it is to find films in the public realm about euthanasia as long as it's pro-euthanasia, and the same with abortion, and that there's an enormous number of stories that need telling in film, novel, drama, poetry, song, etc. And just to give people the courage to go and tell those stories, even if we don't have a lot of resources, but we can encourage, we can instruct them in about, be aware of, the messaging and so forth. And I was very excited when we started out our little plan to set up an academy to encourage artists. And in fact, it's been going very well, and we've had a year of that now, and there's some beautiful poets and people writing fascinating dystopian novels, but the thing is this wonderful, but it's a slow burn in this urgent situation. I'm really excited about the beautiful work. And by the way, if anyone is a creative, a pro-life creative, we do have in Manchester on the 14th of June a Right for Life activation day. So if you would like to apply to come to that, or you'd like to find out more about it, you can go to our website, which is Right, as in WRITE, Right for Life, FOR, life.academy, rightforlife.academy. And you will be able to chat to myself or Tom, who has a very interesting role as head of education and culture in SPUC. And that's the thing about SPUC. It's a very imaginative organisation trying to tackle these issues on different levels. In our culture club, we look at different films and we look at different members of the academy who are creating different songs or stories or pieces of music. And we're also inspired by extraordinary classics like The Elephant Man, or dystopian dramas like Plan 75. The thing is that all these cultural artifacts could help us win the argument. And sometimes I get so frustrated that I can't get them in front of people often enough to say, look, the arguments have been so conclusively made. We know the way this is going to go. Both the stories and the realities of other countries tell us how it's going to go. Their artists have warned us about how it's going to go. Why won't you listen? Do you ever get frustrated when you're doing this work, John?
To be honest, I'm sort of no, I don't really. To be honest, I think just the things I've been doing for the last 30 years, I just always feel that okay, there's always going to be a way. There's always some hope. there's always so many good people working away in various areas, just not just in pro-life, but just trying to make a better world. Uh, Ultimately, people mostly want to do good, and usually, if they're doing bad, most of them that are doing bad have been socially conditioned to do it. So I think for a lot of them, it's enlightening them and try to get them to see the truth. But the trouble for us is we're up against, a huge media monster, and the messaging that can be done, through culture, but also through political players. Through the United Nations, through the European Union, and there's people there working, for example, to depopulate the world. There's people working to try and make sure that no more children are born in Africa if they can help it. There's people working to do
And
that.
these aren't conspiracy theories. You meet these people and you hear them talk, and you
Well, they
read
say that,
history and
yeah,
you see it in
yeah.
action.
They say they want to halve the population of the world, and they're doing that.
Do you think there's an agenda behind the assisted suicide beyond autonomy?
It's going to solve a problem for some people. I think you can't take the economic dimension out of it. I remember being in a debate with Margaret MacDonald when she proposed an assisted suicide bill. I really liked Margaret MacDonald. She was a really decent person, and she was in a point in her life where she was ill, and for her to look to the future and see that she might be facing whatever suffering, I think she couldn't bear it. But anyway, in the debate, I said to her that this is going to save lots of money for families, but for the public purse. And she was absolutely horrified and very angry that I should suggest this.
Really?
But it is a reality. I mean, we are facing an aging population. Just now, the demographics of the UK, I think our population just now, because of the low birth rate, we're looking at a population half-life of something like 50 years. So in 50 years, we will have half the population in the UK. Now, you can change that with immigration and so on, but just now we're round about 1.4 children being born, our fertility rate, and at 1.4, that's the half-life of your society. So by half-life, what I mean is after 50 years, you will have the number of people living as you do now. So that is going to be a very elderly, smaller population. And when you've got that, it's very expensive, and you do not have the people at the bottom end to work, to raise taxes, to do the actual caring. So it really is a
This is
difficult.
why the issues of abortion, family size, and elderly care are very, very connected. In that Japanese film Plan 75, where it imagines a scenario where the government proposes that people can die at 75 in a nice way after a lovely, big, expensive free holiday, and you just see the banality of the paperwork being done, and it's not a million miles away. When I watched the BBC documentary about the right to die, and there was a woman there with her husband, and she said, I wouldn't want him to commit suicide, but if he gets made, medical assistance in dying, well, at least it'll be like organized, it'll be more conscious. It's like sort of thing. It's like, what? And then when they said, well, what did you think of the application process? I mean, talk about, what's the word, euphemisms. It's like you're applying for university or something, And she said, well, I was surprised by how the questions were worded. And it's like when people come across the banality of evil straight in front of themselves, they can't help feeling weirded out, but they can't find the vocabulary to express it.
And they can get used to anything. People can just get, and if it's someone with an official title, taking you into an office, or coming with the authority of the state, or the authority of being a doctor, or a medical professional, it just seems, as you say, that you use the word banal. Now, human beings are capable of anything. I mean, we learned that in the 20th century. We had the Nuremberg trials. We tried to create these structures of human rights. And the underpinning principle of that was we need to hold every society, every government to account. And the foundation of that is that everyone has the right to life. And that needs to be protected. That has been known for thousands of years, even before Christianity, even from the Hippocratic Oath. They weren't Christians, but they realised it's a Pandora's box when you open that and say you're allowed to kill some people.
You know, this program is going out on EWTN, which is, as you know, the Eternal Word Television Network. And I think the importance of encouraging people to pray about these issues if they don't know what to do exactly about them is so important, because it is possible for, you know, demons to disguise from people what they're looking at, and these are just, this kind of reality is described beautifully in like the fairy tale of the Snow Queen. You have the idea of the goblin's mirror. It breaks and the shard goes into everyone's eyes and they can look, and that which is beautiful becomes ugly and that which is ugly becomes beautiful. And when I saw people crying with joy in the streets of Ireland when they heard that they were going to be allowed to kill unborn children, I realized that this kind of demonic reality was uppermost in the battle. Now, I know that SPUC isn't ostensibly a Catholic organisation, but I imagine there's quite a lot of Christians and perhaps Muslims, I don't know, fighting the good fight. But, I think the first plea to the audience of this programme is to really, really pray that, eyes will be opened and that there will be hearts to perceive.
I think what SPUC does do is it embodies the sort of lay organisation, or the sorts of organisation that the Second Vatican Council envisaged, where people of faith
Yes.
would work with other people of goodwill to advance
Yes,
gospel
that's
values. Now,
beautiful.
those gospel values are founded in natural law, or natural law certainly is consistent with them. And lots of people of goodwill can identify natural law. They ultimately do know that it's wrong to kill someone. There might be an overriding pressure that makes them think, well, I know it's wrong, but in this case, I'm saving them from suffering. So there might be something that overrides
Yes.
their ultimate reason.
I was having a very interesting conversation today about suffering and its meaning. And I do think that this conversation certainly needs to go into the public realm more profoundly. We were thinking in this conversation I was having with my priest friend and spiritual director about the greatest Easter we'd ever had, sort of thing. And I was remembering that I've experienced wonderful Easters with John Paul II and with in beautiful monasteries around the world. And it struck my heart immediately that the most beautiful one had been when I was visiting a psychiatric ward, and we had an Easter service there, and there were two little girls who were very unwell, and the priest had baptized them 7 years ago, and they were now having their first communion. And everyone there was ill, the environment was really ugly, and yet the presence of grace and beauty and tenderness, the power of what was going on there was so striking that when anyone says your most beautiful Easter, that's the one I come across. And I think we do need to dare to go right to the depths of and the heights of, in our weaknesses, our strength. And what does that mean? What does surrender mean? Why is it more powerful than all of this, power mongering in the world? Because I think unless we present a spiritual solution, we've seen that people don't agree with reason. They can't see it anymore. What do you think about that, John?
Well, you're raising loads of really interesting points. Yeah, goodness can shine out anywhere. I think the
Yeah.
Pope John Paul II actually said a comment something like that about the film "Life Is Beautiful." I take it
Oh,
you've seen.
yeah.
It's a
It's
wonderful
fantastic.
film, a comedy set in a death camp. It's staggering, and I think also of the Viktor Frankl's experience of being in Auschwitz and
Yes.
his profound insight into the human nature, um, and the ultimate freedom that human beings have, even when externally things look very bad, or they look externally coercive, or looks as if you've got no freedom, but there is an interior freedom, and it's an interior freedom that allows us to choose how we respond to what's going on round about us, and
Yes. And
that
that's
means,
dignity.
yeah.
That's dignity.
So even when things are difficult, and the human person is capable of that, is capable of choosing great good, or choosing to remain good in the face of great evil, as Viktor Frankl did. And there's a lovely book, Interior Freedom, by Jacques Philippe as well, that
Yeah.
reflects on that, and the levels of freedom and detachment that can give us, I suppose, happiness or contentment. Even, you're asking me about, do I get depressed or daunted with what we're facing. In some ways, I do ultimately believe that God permits evil, that a greater good will come.
Wow.
And
Mm.
part of my work I see is try to stop the evil in the world just now, but I do have that reassurance that if I fail in doing it, I might have learned something in the process, but somehow God is going to bring about a greater good. And this expanding culture of death just now,
Yeah.
um, is making a lot of people respond by thinking, well, I need to do something. I need to do something about it. And we're seeing all
Yes.
the growth in conversions, for example, that have been identified by others. I mean, the Bible Society brought out a study this year about the number of people
The
converting to
quiet
faith.
revival. Yeah,
Yes,
the
that's
quiet
right.
revival.
Young people coming back to church. So
Yeah.
I think the atheistic humanism or the nihilism of secularism gets superficial and unattractive eventually, and people want something deeper. I actually, when Pope Leo got elected, it inspired me to start reading Confessions again by Saint Augustine, and I
Yes.
and, and I was
Ah.
interested that it was him reading Cicero, Saint Augustine reading Cicero, that made him
Ah.
realize that there's something more profound than the
Yes.
pleasures of the world about human
Yes.
existence. So
Yes.
even pagan philosophers or
Absolutely.
pagan statesmen can say things that can trigger the formation of one of the greatest saints in the Western
And I
world.
think this is our opportunity. Everything in a way is on our side in that we've got the depth of metaphysical, ontological goodness, on our side to share, and the intellectual life, and to bring this into the conversation more, to encourage people not to be afraid, oh dear, they'll think I'm pro-life, oh dear. I remember working in a bookshop, and the other men in the bookshop were just absolutely shocked beyond measure that I was pro-life. So when the woman came into the shop who'd organized the pro-choice, should we call it, anti-life demonstration or something, they were just so excited to, what they thought as throw me to the wolves of of saying, oh look, here's our colleague, she's pro-life. But of course the conversation was a lot more, interesting than I think she'd anticipated. But there was a woman there who came into the shop one day, and she was, the usual kind of anti-life position, but she managed to really shock the lads in the shop, because she actually said, if there was a baby on the counter and the mother wanted to kill it, I'd be fine with that. The guys
Yeah,
just looked at each other, because I'd said to them, you don't understand where this is coming from and where it's
yeah,
going to. And so she illustrated the point exactly. And then literally the boys left the counter. And I got talking to her and I said, I found out that she said, look, I was an unwanted pregnancy. I just happened to be here. There's no meaning to my life. And there isn't a meaning to anyone else's either. So people can hold really remarkably awful sort of political views because of personal, emotional,
yeah,
psychological
yeah, yeah.
experiences. And this is one of the battlefields, isn't it? Bringing love and nurturing and healing to people.
And hope. It's the year of hope, but I think probably my favourite encyclical is Spe Salvi by Pope Benedict, and in that he talks about
Ah,
the
Space
hope,
Salve, yeah, superb.
and especially gives the illustration of Saint Joseph Bakita, and
Ah,
her
yes.
her encountering Christianity, and come up with this person that actually cared for someone. They actually cares for me, and my value, until that she'd been a slave, my life actually has value, and there are hopes. There are some things I can look forward to, and Pope Benedict talks about the great hope, but the small hopes that carry us through life
Yeah,
that we have.
absolutely. It's a stunning, stunning story and encyclical. And in fact, I did visit her convent and I was
Oh
so
wow,
struck.
yeah,
She actually had the gift of miracles, and talk about forgiveness that she had when someone said to her, if you could meet the people that stole you away from your home when you were 6, and tortured you and sold you on, and then they tortured you and then the other people tortured you, what would you say to them? And she said, I'd get down on my knees and I would kiss their hands,
wow,
because without them I wouldn't have found the Lord who loves me. And I'm like,
yeah,
wow, she's really found something.
yeah.
And so maybe into this whole debate, and I want to ask you a little bit more about where we are with the whole decriminalization of abortion as well, before we end. Every opportunity, every conversation we have about these issues, is an opportunity not just to get into an argument, but to get into a really healing and broadening conversation. Because when I read and reread Architects of the Culture of Death, I don't know if you've come across that book. It's a winner, and it
No,
starts with
I've actually not read that
Schopenhauer.
one. No.
Oh, I think I'd like to make a little program about it because it's
Uh-huh.
really brilliant. It starts with Schopenhauer, who hands on the baton of nihilism to Nietzsche, and then on through Ayn Rand, and then right up to the people who started Cosmopolitan magazine. And you can see link by link by link how this really depressed philosopher, Schopenhauer, who just hated life and thought that the
Yeah,
whole of life was a malicious will without meaning that just forced itself forwards and expressed itself in the world. You can say, well, there's the foundation of your culture. Is that what
yeah,
you want? Is that what you want?
yeah,
And what's the alternative? Because we have everything to offer.
yeah. Well, we live at an age where the opportunities. I think of my own kids. The opportunities they have for traveling. To get to know the world.
Mm,
The standard of living that we have. The
it's
opportunities
amazing.
for the healthcare that's available, and somehow we want to destroy it. It's quite tragic. And you sort of see it's like people running to the cliff to go off, and like, please stop. We
Yeah,
found the values that allow a civilization to flourish,
yeah,
and you've just lost sight of that for a while. But please, let's re-examine it. But
yes.
this absolute freedom, this will to power, is just driving them off the cliff edge, and it's
Mm.
actually genuinely is now taking our civilization off the cliff edge, just from the demographic
And it's absolutely
dimension.
avoidable. Yeah,
Yeah,
it's absolutely avoidable. Pope Paul VI told us what would happen when contraception was introduced, and
yeah,
then lo and behold, it's a birth gap, not a
yeah,
population
yes, yeah,
explosion. Fascinating.
yeah.
So tell us a bit about the decriminalization of abortion. Lots of people say, "Oh, what does that exactly mean?"
Well, ultimately, decriminalisation of abortion means you can have abortion to birth for any reason. So whether it's you enjoy the thought of a baby at 38 weeks gestation dying, or whether you think
Gosh,
you'd want to get rid of any girls, as China has done in the past,
yes.
or whatever reason, you're going on a holiday, or it's interfering with your plans for the skiing season, you can have an abortion at any stage whatsoever. It's decriminalised, and no one's going to hold you to account for
How
that. So
close are we to that perhaps happening then?
we could be as close as 2 weeks to an amendment being made to the police and crime bill. So that could go
Is that
through. Is it?
that's the Stella Creasy amendment, is it?
No, it's from a. I'm going to struggle with this name, but it's Tonya Antonietza Nazi.
Right.
So she has put forward that, but there's something like 58 MPs have signed it. So we've got
What?
this proposal that would basically allow women to be taken completely out of the criminal law, and as long as it's related to their own pregnancy. So, I mean, ultimately, it's portrayed as we can't allow poor women to be targeted. There's been a few famous cases in the last couple of years about women who've been prosecuted. With Carla Foster, who'd used abortion pills at home for a baby at 34 weeks gestation. And we've had the recent case of Nicola Packer, and she did the same at 26 weeks. A very sordid story. But the way the media portray it, or especially the abortion industry, they portray it as these poor women victims. Why on earth were they ever investigated? Now, every other law, the police will at least look into it, and then if it goes to court, the judge will at least say, well, are there any mitigating factors? But they don't want there to be any
It's the
oversight whatsoever.
ironies of feminism, isn't it? That they always like,
Yeah.
are you telling me I've not got agency? And then suddenly it's, oh, women are victims. They
Yes. Yeah.
can't
Yeah.
decide
Yeah.
anything to do with this. They can't have a baby and give it away, even though there's millions of women who want to look after babies and
Yeah.
are queuing up to adopt. It just has no reason
Yeah.
behind it.
So there's a few factors around that, of course. So there's the propaganda that's used, as we say. I mean, it's the same with the assisted suicide. Now they don't use the word assisted suicide. It's assistance in dying, and it's vague
Mm.
terms like that, or terms that that hide what it is, because when you use the real words for what you're doing, that's too offensive to people, or it wakes them up. So it's abortion to birth, really, is what decriminalisation is. Uh, Abortion is a political football as well, I suppose. So there's people who just join the camp. I'm in that camp, and if it's anything for abortion, I'm for it. So if it's for whatever,
yes,
if it's Stella Creasy, I suspect she'll bring in another amendment as well, perhaps to say that abortion is a human right, as we're seeing various jurisdictions around the world trying to take that approach. So there's the political football of it, and then there's the women and those involved in the whole industry who they're actually fighting against their consciences, I believe. I know it's because somehow they've been involved in abortion, whether they've had one themselves or helped someone else have one. Something is telling them there's something they've done wrong, and they think it's the world. That's why this whole push about the last thing in the world you can do is judge someone.
That's a very interesting observation.
They think they're being judged by us. I mean, we give counselling to women who've had abortions. No one treats them better than we do.
And Rachel's Vineyard and these other beautiful organisations.
Exactly, and we put ourselves in the way of harm to try and offer them help, to try and offer them a different path to take. So we know that, but for them, there's something that makes them think, if I can get the whole world to tell me that it's okay, I'm going to feel better.
That's a really, really good point.
The reality
really is.
They never will feel better, because it's their conscience. And the more they try and suppress their conscience, the more it's coming out. So you can see it's very, very shrill. There's a few women, and it's a very small number, but they are absolutely driven. And the thing is, I mean, there's one particular woman, I mean, she attacks Spuck a lot, her personnel, and she's really, really driven. I don't know what her involvement is, but we offered her to come in and meet her counsellors and just to chat about the issue. And she ended up portraying that as an attack. She said that she felt threatened by the fact that we offered to meet with her. So there's something driving that they're terrified to confront us. But to be honest, for them, I mean, I really feel sorry for them. They will find peace. I mean, I've spoken to women who've had abortion, and they say the greatest thing we've done for them is to give them peace. One woman spoke to me about how she hated herself. She said, I thought I didn't deserve ever to be happy ever again. I thought God must hate me. And she said, but when I came along to Arch, and she said, I encountered, it was a counsellor we had, Margaret Cuthell at the time. She said she gave me happiness again in my life, and she was genuinely radiating joy as she spoke to me about her life and what she'd gone through, and the background to why she'd ended up having an abortion were tragic, genuinely tragic, and that is often the case.
Very, very difficult stories.
Often the case.
I remember reading a book called And Still They Weep, and there were terrible stories, but the abortion didn't make anything better. In fact, it made it all worse.
Yes.
So John, do you think the fight is ultimately, is it top down, we've got to get to our MPs and get them to change their minds, or is it grassroots from the bottom up, or is it both?
I think it's both of those things at least, and then there's the other things. There's the people don't know about the reality. I was chatting to someone on a business call I had about something else, and then when he found out what I did, what I work as, he was asking questions, and then when I told him the scale of the number of abortions, even that, I just said, well,
do tell us the numbers.
This year it's likely to be, I mean, the official figures are not out yet, but the official figures are likely to be about 300,000 abortions this year. So it's a staggering number.
Is that in Britain or
in the UK?
In the UK. It is.
Now, that's more than that's about 1 in 3 pregnancies now are ending in abortion. So 1 in 3 is a staggering scale. And then you think, that is our greatest resource, the human beings of the next generation. So when people know the scale of it, so for people to learn that, but we need to mobilize people. So externally, you mobilize people to put pressure on the politicians to do the right thing. But then there's the direct speaking to politicians and try to enlighten them, try to make them aware of the arguments, try to show them the damage that it does as well. It's very poorly understood by most people about how damaging abortion is to women. And the other thing that's very poorly understood by those who are campaigning for abortion, or they want to hide it, is the level of coercion for women to have abortions.
Yes.
That's huge, and
I
those
mean, I
who
remember that when I was standing outside abortion clinics praying, I shouldn't say clinic, abortion facilities, and they'd say things like, well, I'm here because I have no choice.
exactly,
I said, well, I
yeah,
thought you were meant to be here because you had a choice. Well,
yes,
no.
yeah, yeah,
And also how abortion hurts men, grandmothers, grandfathers, friends. There are lots of victims of abortion, and I think men's rights in this issue have been soundly ignored in an absolutely shocking way. Who is it that was it? Kelsey Grammer was saying that he used to be a supporter of abortion, but now since his son was aborted, is he said it still eats away at my soul.
yeah.
And I think it's just really important that that women and men are working together to protect to protect our next generation and protect each other. There are so many lies out there, and we have the truth. And I just want to encourage people that, don't be afraid of people criticizing you, shouting at you, spitting at you, hating you. That's all nothing. It's like,
Yeah, well, I prefer when they don't do that, but
yeah,
but
it's always
yeah,
better,
some
isn't it? But ultimately, it can be
the,
quite
the, well,
funny.
there are people who can do that, and it's water off a duck's back for them. But there's lots of other simple things you can do, and that's what
Right.
we've tried to do at Spot. We've tried to do the whole range of things, so you can just create films, plays,
Yeah.
poems, stories. You
Yeah.
can do, if that's your thing, you can do that, or you can help with social media. You can set up a branch. You can just keep your local parish informed of pro-life issues and what the big challenges are politically. There's a whole spectrum of things that people can do that they feel they're able to do. I think that's
With their
important,
skills. So
important
if they
thing.
come to your website, and can they find ways to get involved with different sorts of things
Yeah,
now?
the website will let them see the sort of panoply of all the things that we do, and I think there's something in there for everyone, including
Fantastic.
the right to life stuff that we're working with you. I
Yeah, the
really
Right for Life Academy. It's
I
great fun.
loved the time I had a chance to come to the academy. It was brilliant, and to know there's other people, creative people, thinking about this. I mean, just now you're right that we're small, but
Yeah.
we could be the pebbles that start the avalanche. That's
Yeah.
ultimately what we're hoping for. Because society will turn. It's gone down a dead end in some ways by this glorification of freedom to the freedom from restraint.
Yes.
Whereas we know that freedom is a wonderful dimension of human nature, but it allows us to choose the good.
It allows us to choose the good and do the good and be creative and have fresh ideas, like the lady who started the hospice movement and all the great things in the world that make people get up and be excited. We've got everything on our side, and God is for us and helping us. So, John, thank you for all the amazing work you do, and over the long haul you've been doing this, and all the amazing people in SPUC. Thank you so much for being with us today. And is there anything you wanted to say just to finish off? Anything we might have forgotten to cover? Anything we need to
We've covered a
campaign
lot.
for?
We've covered a
We
lot,
have,
and my memory's not as good as it used to be, Sarah.
so
So
this Ledbetter bill, we have to make
there's the
sure
bills. Make sure you're letting your politician know. Especially, we've not got much time to act on the
this
decriminalisation
is really
amendments.
shocking. I didn't realize it was 2 weeks' time. My goodness.
That's as soon as it could be. The likelihood
Oh,
is it's probably going to be 4 or 5 weeks. But yeah,
yeah, let's get
that
on
is
to that.
crucial. So if we can try and we will be doing an event in Parliament, so you can even
Oh,
find out
okay.
that you'll find out that on our website. But you can even contact your MP and ask your MP to come to an event, and they can find out a bit more about that, find out about the truth of what that actual proposal means. So no, it's been
Great.
a pleasure chatting to you. There's probably much more we could keep going on about, but that was wonderful.
Thank you so much, John. God bless you. Thank you so
God bless
much.
you. Bye bye.